this email? What does it mean?
Communication is the imparting or exchanging of information or news.
The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place.
Conversation is the oral exchange of sentiments, observations, opinions, or ideas.
Forbes Books Radio presents The Conversation with Clinton M. Padgett.
Welcome back to part 2 of my conversation with Ryan Hawk, former college quarterback, host of the Learning Leader Show, and author of Welcome to Management. We pick up the discussion with Ryan explaining the difference between deep work and shallow work.
Well, I mean, Cal Newport is the best. I highly recommend his book, So Good They Can't Ignore You, and his book, Deep Work. I've had him on the podcast a few times to talk about it. I mean, shallow work is the mindless stuff that you do, kind of administrative tasks, emails, text messaging, scrolling on reels. When I wrote that, it's funny that some of that stuff didn't even exist. But deep work to me is you're able to block out everything else and focus on the one task. So, for example, writing a book is probably good. I wonder if you have this, because I know you handwrite your books, which is insane. But I think for me, the rule that Dan Pink told me years ago that helps with deep work when it comes to writing books is, okay, the first 90 minutes of my day, the only thing I'm allowed to do, this is a rule I'm setting for myself, is to write. Now, I don't have to write. I can look at the blank page, but I can't do anything else.
Right.
So the rule is that's the only thing you can do. So what happens is sometimes, especially on those tough days, you sit there and you don't write anything. But eventually, since you've set this rule that like this deep work rule of writing or nothing, you eventually start writing. And then once you get going, right, the hardest part is like lacing up the shoes and starting the run. Once you're running, you've created momentum. Same thing with writing, same thing with lifting weights, same thing with a lot of stuff. And so to me, it's like I'm going to dedicate time to the deep work. And even if it's rocky at the beginning and it's hard to get started, but once I get going, then I'm creating momentum for myself. And then I can get into that flow of the deep work that we want. But if you want to produce great work, if you want to do things that put a positive dent in the world, I think, again, a commonality among people who do that is they regularly have deep work time blocked on their calendar.
Yeah, I can't remember the guy's name now, but he wrote a book called The One Thing. And basically it was when he was writing the book, he said he had to carve time out and block it off. And he would actually tell his office.
Gary Keller, right?
Yeah, Keller, that's it. And he says, you can't, the office can't contact me. I'm locked in this room. I'm not going to talk to anybody. And so that's a great philosophy when you're trying to write something. And the takeaway for me out of that whole book was the way he says is, what is the one thing that I can do that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or goes away? And that's just such a great takeaway. Yep.
Sometimes like the people who can simplify the things, that they're as helpful as anybody. Is like, yes. Okay, let's go.
So I'm curious. Let's continue on that deep work thing, because I don't want to throw my son under the bus. He's getting ready to go to Auburn in the fall, but he grew up in the TikTok generation and the screen time, and getting him to focus on something can be quite difficult. So do you think this is a skill that's atrophying with some of the younger generation, or if so, do you think you can get it back?
Well, I mean, I've similar age kids, so I was just at orientation at Ohio State, in fact, on Monday and Tuesday with my daughter Ella. That's where she's going in the fall. And yes, just observing and seeing how, I mean, it's easy for them to say like, old man, get off my lawn type stuff when we talk about this. But yeah, I think as I've said to them, like it makes it even more valuable today to be able to delay gratification, to be able to focus, to be able to put the phones down, to be able to do that. You're going to differentiate yourself among others when you do that. And so we just had a family vacation in the Bahamas a couple weeks ago, and I didn't want to set rules, because nobody likes rules, especially on vacation. But I got these cards that just had questions on them, and they were built for teenagers. And I just said, hey, we're gonna play this card game, and so you're just gonna draw a random card and then answer the question. And what the cool thing that happened is, when we're all kind of deep in conversation because they're laughing or making fun of me because I bring out cards at dinner. But what happened once we got rolling is the phones, they didn't need to be a part of this game, even though we never told them that, like, hey, no phones at dinner. We didn't make a rule. And it was just neat to see what happens when we went analog, much like you as a writer, right? and just started asking questions, and then follow-up questions start being thrown at the person from somebody else at the dinner table, and we're not really even using that technology. So I try to like throw in those life lessons. They roll their eyes at me, you know how kids do with their mom and dad. But I think they, hopefully some of it sticks. And then we have to be the model as the parents too, of that we don't need to be tied to these things too. We are like anybody else at times, but trying our best to be as present as possible, model the right behavior. But yes, I think those skills have certainly atrophied, and it's even more valuable to be as present as possible when you're with people. And I think that's one of the things we do try to overtly teach and talk about is when you're with people, be as present as possible. Try to make them feel like the only person in the room. Big eye contact, right? All of that stuff is really, really important because those skills, as you said, are probably going away because so many people spend so much time just going from reel to reel or TikTok to TikTok, and that doesn't build good habits.
He's always like, Dad, why don't you get TikTok? I said, because I want to be like you and just scroll. I mean, I think it's addicting.
I've got it. It's addicting, man. They all are. That they're built by the smartest people in the world to addict you, and they work. Those people they do a great job. And so even though we all know it, if you do it, like that was funny or that was interesting, and then you go to the next one. And some of them are interesting. Like we've planned hiking trips because of TikToks we've watched. My wife and I. So there's cool reels of people you follow on Instagram when they say, we went to Sedona and this is what we did, this, and this. And you're like, wow, okay, I'm going to do that. So yes, there are elements of it that can be a learning tool, but there's probably so much more of it that is not great for you.
No, not at all. I had mentioned to you in the kind of in the green room about Dr. Sherry Turkle, who's written several bestsellers. One of them is called Alone Together. And it's an older book for her now, but I love the message. It basically says these devices that people think are going to bring us together, they actually keep us apart. And so kind of tying up what you said, to me, there's nothing as deflating as to have a conversation with somebody who's constantly looking at their phone. Because you're like, wait a minute, am I not as important as that person on the phone? I mean, I'm right here. Look at me in the eye. Let's talk. Don't look down.
I mean, it's funny what this made me think of. So a couple 6 weeks ago, I flew out to Boulder, Colorado to meet one of my heroes, Jim Collins. And that's where he lives. And I love hiking too. So it was a great excuse to both hike and record with him in person. And I rent this studio in Boulder, in fact, the studio where he recorded the audiobook of his most recent book. And so it's this crazy cool studio where there's a room where all like the engineers and those people sit. And then there's a separate room where we were going to be video recorded. But he walks into the room with all the engineers where I was waiting. We kind of said hello, shook hands, started talking. And then the first thing that he did, he took off his Apple Watch and then he placed it down on the table. Then he took out his phone and he placed it down on the table. Then he took out his key fob, right? Put that down on the table. And he took out his little Ziploc bag, which had his credit cards and cash and stuff, and set that down on the table. And there's this neat little pile. And then he goes, all right, let's go. And then we walked into the other room to record. And so he was overtly showing me, I am going to be fully locked in and present. All of my stuff, it's not going to be near me. It's going to be in another room, in fact. And so when I walk in that room to record with you, and he didn't say a word, right? He didn't tell me this is what he's doing. He just did it. And it was the first thing he did. And it was so interesting. My wife took this really cool picture of the little pile of his stuff. And then you could see us in the background in the separate room because they have that glass, like in a music place where you'd record music, but we were recording a podcast. And it just showed me, man, like this guy's living it. Like this is, I'll always think of that picture in that little pile of a phone and an Apple Watch and a key fob and a Ziploc bag that worked as his wallet of saying, I'm not going to have anything on me. In fact, it's going to be in a different room, and I'm going to be so locked in to be here with you right now, fully present. And I think that like those little things can work as reminders to say, hey, whatever it is you're choosing to do, be in it. Just be in the thing right now, fully present. And I think if you want it to be great, I think that's the only way.
I love that analogy. I mean, that's what great message to send that I'm all in,
All in. That's so cool.
You talk about win the morning, and how does that win the morning practice help a leader set the right tone for the day? But before I ask that, I got two other questions for you real quick. Do you really map out all the 168 hours of your week? I read that in the Forbes article, and then you also talk about getting up at 4:44. So why not 4:45? I'm just curious.
So one of my teammates, Andy Hetzer, we both were the only two people who played on the varsity team as a freshman at Centerville High School. He was a linebacker. I was a quarterback. Unfortunately, after that freshman season, he got in a car accident and died on Mother's Day of our freshman year in Centerville. He was number 44. And so 44 is a pretty important number to me. And that's like 1 minute before 4:45. So I think of him when it comes to that, and it still gives me goosebumps to think about him. So that's why I do that. When it comes to the morning, do I map out the full days? No, because I have kids, and that makes it hard. But I do map out the mornings because I own the mornings. The mornings are mine. I get up early, as you mentioned, because I want to accomplish things before my family wakes up. And that is a question I get quite often, is like, how do you be a present dad, a present husband when you try to do all this other stuff like write books and podcasts and keynote speaking and all that? Well, I try to work when they're sleeping or when they're in school. To put it as just as straightforward as possible. So when they're sleeping, I get up early, I write, I prepare for podcasts, I stretch, I hydrate, and I punish my body physically in a gym, running, stuff like that. Put my daughter Charlie on the bus at 8:06. We're at summer now, so she doesn't get on the bus now, but put her on the bus at 8:06 and then get her off the bus. Usually around 3:58 in the afternoon. But in between those times, I'm going to get after it and work really, really hard. I like being able to put her on the bus and get her off the bus. I think these are good markers of the day to be present for her. She won't ride the bus forever. I know this because we have older ones who don't ride the bus; they drive. And so I'm trying to understand we live in the good old days, and I'm going to make the most of the good old days. So, but in between all that time, whether it's they're sleeping or they're in school, I try to work really, really hard in those hours to maximize what I do. And then once I'm with them, then I try to be as present, right, as possible. My dad always told me your presence is required, not your presence, like the gifts you give them for Christmas, but your presence, presence, is required, whether that's with your people that you lead at work or certainly with the most important team you lead, that's your family. So I try to think about that this afternoon, right after this. In fact, we're going to go swimming at the pool. It's hot, it's sunny, it's summer. And so this day has been very packed, starting early. She had a sleepover last night. Our youngest one did, our older ones did too, actually. And, but I know she's waiting to go to the pool after this. And so that's what I'm going to do. So to me, it's like when it's time to work, get after it as hard as you can go and get it done. And then when it's time to go to the pool, be present as possible and enjoy yourself. So I try to like figure out the best way to do that, and I mess it up all the time. but try my best to be cognizant and thoughtful and intentional about it.
So I'm probably not as good at it as you are, because I do have these 3-week on the road engagements overseas where I might be gone
3
for
weeks?
straight weeks. Yeah.
Damn, where do you go?
Well, like if we're planning the Olympics for Paris and for Coca-Cola, then I have to go for 3 weeks.
To Paris?
Yeah, well, we've done it many, many times.
Do you take your wife with you?
Not usually, because it's usually during the school year.
Oh, and you're also probably working a lot when you're there?
Yeah, there was once that the family was in summertime, so the family got to come over, and then after the 3 weeks were over, we got to go. We stayed in Europe and went, travel around for 2 weeks. But
that's sweet.
Generally, I'm gone for these assignments 3 weeks at a time, and so I can't always be there. But I did do the thing that you just mentioned that you actually talk about in the book that your dad did, is I never say no. Yeah. If one of my kids say, well, can we do this? Can we do that? The answer is always, I always try to make it to be yes. And I'll try to pause what I'm doing and go throw or go, my daughter likes to swing, go take her out to the swing, whatever, because it's so important to be there.
How old are your kids?
So my son is, he's 19 and
Nice.
My daughter is 16, but she's special needs. So she's not 16 mentally, put it that way. So she likes to swing.
Okay. I love it, man. That's cool. That's cool. And your son's going to Auburn?
Yeah, he starts Auburn in the fall.
As a freshman?
Yep, as a freshman.
How's that going to be for you guys?
It's not too bad. My brother lives in Auburn, so I
Nice.
told my son, you're lucky your Uncle Chris can bail you out of jail before I get there. I can calm down on the drive over, because Atlanta to Auburn's not that bad. But yeah, he's a good kid, so I don't think that'll happen. He's
Good
not
for
like
you,
me.
man. That's the best. That's the best. That's really, really cool.
It is, for sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned that your interview with Kat Cole at Cinnabon was one of your favorites. Why is that?
She's remember before we started recording, I said the problem that I have is being concise, which you've now experienced. Kat is this incredible combo of I call her a clip machine. So in the podcasting world, when you work with other people, they always try to create clips to help grow your show or help people become aware by posting those clips on social media. And when I send the recordings with Kat, I've had her a few times now. When I send the recordings with Kat to the people who do all the clips, I go, the whole thing's a clip. I mean, you could cut every single answer. She's just a combination of the words, the like brilliance per word is as high as it gets when it comes to like everything she says is super thoughtful. It's practical. It's entertaining. It's usually scientifically backed, or like it's not just it's real, like it's actual, like useful. So I don't know. I just think she's developed a skill as a very, very high level communicator, and find her to be just super interesting. And then she first, when I asked about being a productive achiever, because that was a question I asked a lot back in that first conversation with her. She gave me this kind of model that I still think about and aspire to every day, and that's having high levels of courage and confidence, right? But then equally balanced with high levels of curiosity and humility. And if you got that, like you're probably going to be pretty good. That's what she looks for when hiring a leader that's a productive achiever, of someone that's got great courage and confidence mixed with curiosity and humility. And so, I'd say the combination of her communication skill and then the things that I've learned from her, and then what it's helped me to as an aspirational goal to be a person like that.
Now, you used the C word earlier in the conversation called culture. And I'm curious, how do you define the word culture? Because it means different things to different people. And I personally don't think it's what beverage you have in the break room, or whether you have, as you put it, ping pong tables in the room or not. But so how do you define culture?
It's what you do. It's the actions of an organization. So if somebody has their values up on the wall, that's fine. That's cool. The number one question I'm going to ask, because we do this, like we go in and we work with companies and specifically senior leadership teams. That's literally what our business is. And so if we see that, we're just going to say, we go and interview people throughout the organizations, and we just say, okay, what are the values? A lot of times they don't know. And so then we know they're not real. Or if they do know, we'll say, okay, well, are those real, or are those accurate? Or then give me the specific behaviors that make those things real. And so the people with high performance and I think great cultures, again, we love Dan Coyle's work. I've had him on a number of times, just hung out in Cleveland with him in January, which was an amazing day as well. Culture Code is just an incredible book, but it's what you actually do. And so what are the behaviors that make those values real? Like, how do you specifically honor them? What does it look like? What does it sound like? What do you guys say? What do you do? That's what culture is to me. So regardless of the words you use, regardless of the values you put up on the wall, again, I'm cool with that. That's fine. But I'm more interested in what does it look like when those get put into play. That's ultimately what your culture is.
Yeah, that brings up a question. So basically, you think about culture, and we also think about mentors, tying those two things together. If I'm a person who got hired during the pandemic and I've never worked in the office with somebody, because to me, culture isn't, like you said, it's not what's on the wall. It's how do people actually work? How do they actually act? Like when the phone you hang the phone up with the client, what did that person actually say? Not what's on the wall. And so it's hard to observe that and understand what the true culture is if you're not in the office. I'm just curious, in a world where we're a lot of remote or hybrid, how do you find the right mentors and how do you learn the culture?
Yeah, I think it is a lot tougher, but I it's become more normal now. I think you need even more communication. I think it's really important, though, to get together with your people as much as possible. Nathan Barry, I talked to him about this, who runs a completely distributed company. Jason Fried and David Hannemeyer Hansen, they both run a company like that as well. I know they're always focused on their next offsite where they get everybody together and they do those Kit does them at Nathan Barry. He does it 4 times a year, and Basecamp, those guys do it. 37 Signals, they do it twice a year. They're constantly thinking about getting their people together so they can talk about that. On a daily basis, it's tough, but I do think that's where there's more communication needed. I think a writing culture can help, meaning you're always documenting what you do. Specifics, again, getting back to that word, specifics of actions taken and of how you treated each other, how you take care of customers, how you take care of each other, the actions that you actually did, documenting that, having conversations, meeting, all of that's really, really important. And then you got to bump shoulders, man. Like, you got to create a collision of really curious people, get your people together as much as possible in person, budget out all those types of things. I think the great companies, especially if like they're not in person or they're not in an office, I think they're really good about those offsites.
Yeah, we're distributed across the U.S. My team is, and we get together once a year.
How many people?
20.
How do you do it? So how do you make sure your culture is what you want when you're not together in person?
So we're lucky that people aren't on an island. So these projects usually have multiple people from my team on there. So we're reinforcing each other. So you don't see everybody on your team all the time, but you see probably 3 or 4 people from your team all the time. And we have that once a year. We bring everybody back here to Atlanta and have our conference where we talk about best practices and really reinforcing the family that we are.
What do you do during that meeting or the meeting? How I'm very curious about the specifics of like how long, like what do you do? Do you bring in outside people? Do you just focus on just you? Like, what is it like?
It's a day and a half typically for us, and they'll fly in Sunday and we'll be there Monday and half day Tuesday before they fly back out. And we'll have each person get up and talk about what they've worked on for the last year. We'll talk about best practices, what challenges they had, how can we solve those? To your point, what went well? How do we replicate that? What do they need help with? And then so part of it really to me is just the bonding that happens. Because if you're a distributed organization, especially if you're a consulting firm like we are, if you're working at one client for multiple years, you can almost start to think you work for that client. And you have to remind them, no, you work here for us and you're working with that client. So it can be tough to do. That's why we have to do that.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I think that's really, really, really important.
Yeah. So the other thing, another one that came up that I really liked was the zero-sum game, right? Because I've worked with people in the past that win-win just means I win both ways because I win and you lose, right? And I hate that because, and you actually mentioned it in the book when you talk about competing against Ben Roethlisberger for the starting quarterback position, one person's going to win, the other person by default loses, right, in that situation. So as a leader, how do you prevent that zero-sum competition from poisoning your corporate team? Because even in corporate, you mentioned the guy that jumped up in the cubicle because he closed the deal and was going to be top of the leaderboard.
I remember that. It's funny, going back to this book. Well, I mean, competitive cultures are okay. You don't want to be toxic competition. You want to honor people who are living the values that you've set, not just the performance. I think that's important. Yeah, but I came from a world that was very black and white and very zero-sum. As a quarterback, only one guy gets to play. And for me to win, that means you lose. And if you win, that means I lose. It took me time to grow out of that, to understand this world of abundance, to understand that like I was a hoarder of information of what I was doing when I was selling a lot and doing really well initially, because like I had to grow out of this zero-sum black and white type of a world. And I had a great mentor and leader named Rex Caswell, who's still a great mentor and leader for me. Tell me, hey dude, it's not going to hurt you by helping other people or by sharing what you're doing. In fact, you've told me you want to be a manager. You're definitely not going to be a manager by keeping all of this stuff to yourself. You got to be a good teammate. You got to be a good team player. You got to try to help other people. And what happens is like creates like a really cool flywheel of information sharing when you're around other high performers and you're all trying to help each other get a little bit better. And yes, may they pass you up in the stack rankings? Yeah, they could. That's happened before. I think it could, and that can be hard. But I also think competition can breed excellence and can push you a little bit. And so yes, there are some potential downsides if like you strictly only just want to crush everybody else. I guess there could be some downside there, but for the most part, especially in the world today, when it comes to podcasting and book writing and all the stuff that I do, it's all upside. Like there's plenty of work to go, more than we could ever get to go around. And so, but yeah, one of the things I love doing is helping past podcast guests get speaking gigs. And so it's one of like the ways I go on offense after a speaking gig. I will give them, I say, look, your next conference, your next offsite, your next thing, you should have this, or this person. I will gladly make an introduction. And so every time, like, and usually like they'll get hired. Like if I've done a good job, they'll hire one of them. They trust me. And the people I'm serving up to them are really, really good speakers, obviously. And so like stuff like that, like there's plenty out there, and I don't do it for this idea of trying to get something. It just feels really good. It feels so good to help the company because you're inviting them to meet a brilliant speaker, and then the speaker, you're helping them get a gig. Like it just feels really good to connect people where both of them win. Like the gift giver, you know how it is. Like when you give your kids gifts on Christmas and you watch the like a look in their eye. That's the best gift I could ever get is seeing them be excited and happy and grateful. That's way better than anything they could give me. Maybe the only thing that could be similar to that is when they write me a handwritten like love note. Like that's right there for me. I love those. But other than that, like seeing the joy in somebody's eye is awesome. And so when you can make that connection or help somebody else, that feels really, really good. And I think the more you do that, it seems like the luckier you get in life just in general. And so I try to live by that. But yeah, it certainly took years to grow out of that.
You know, Keith Ferrazzi talks about that in his book, Never Eat Alone. He tells a story about he was in Hollywood and he wanted to make this connection, and he talked to this person who he knew could make the connection. And the person said, no, that's a card I can only play once, and I'm not going to play it for you. And the truth is it's not a card that you could play once. It's just it's unlimited cards.
Mm-hmm. So true. Yep.
In hiring, you talk about looking for givers rather than takers. So if you're interviewing somebody, how can I spot a taker? Because they're probably on their best behavior, right, when they're doing the interview.
Yeah, well, I've been fooled. We all have when you hire, so it's tough. You're right; they're on their best behavior. I like to dig in as much as possible to hear the story of their life. You kind of opened with that question, but I would keep digging and hear how they talk about things that have gone well. To hear when you ask them about great moments, like did it involve a lot of eyes? Or did it involve a lot of wheeze or like that? And yes, you could still get fooled if people understand that you're that type of guy. So there's still a chance. But you can kind of feel that in a person when they're genuinely juiced up and excited about helping people, about being a part of a team, about being a good teammate, about if they use the word I too much. Like we can kind of feel that and sense that the more and more we talk to people. So I just think it's really about having as many conversations as possible, seeing them outside of the interview format process and just hearing the way they talk about accomplishments, hearing the way they talk about failures, hearing the way they talk about how they responded, what words they use, thinking of I versus we, stuff like that. And I think the more reps I've gotten at that, the better I've got. Like most of us, it takes repetitions to get more skill, and so I try to do that as much as possible. But certainly, it's tough at times because yeah, you're right. They're always on their best behavior.
You know, your dad seems like a pretty amazing guy because you talk in the book about how he would get up at 5 a.m. to feed quarters into the batting cage or go throw a basketball or throw football with you. He never said no to that, and then he taught you that bad news doesn't age well, right?
Yep.
And that's certainly a challenge that I think a lot of us have. I know I've had this in the past where the way I tell myself is I'm picking my battles, but in reality, I just don't want to have this conversation, which I should have, and it just festers and it ends up being much worse when I finally have to have it.
Yeah.
And you talk about that actually cost you. You've experienced that, and it cost you with your team.
Respect. Yeah, bad news doesn't get better with age. In the story you're talking about, I had a person who was a single mom, the only one providing for her family. Unfortunately, was an underperformer, was on a performance improvement plan, was not meeting what she needed to meet month by month, and I kind of let it slide, and it just gotten way out of hand, way too many months of underperformance. And eventually I brought her in the room with HR and fired her. And she looked at me in front of HR and said, well, you let it go for this many months. Why are you firing me now? You should have never. And I didn't have a good answer because she was right. I just let it slide because I kind of felt bad, and I was just hoping like somehow it would go away. And I was a little scared. I was a little nervous. I was uncomfortable. I didn't want to fire her. And so this was bad news. Like, it did not get better with age. So that was a big moment for me. And I've had other situations in the selling world where you have bad news to give to somebody and you're like, well, maybe it'll just go away if I don't tell them or I don't say anything. They wanted this territory and they're not getting it. Well, they'll figure out they're not getting it just by the fact that, nothing's happening. So I just won't talk about it. We do this, and just tell them, Yeah. And my dad said, hey, this stuff never gets better with age and it doesn't ever go away. So I've just learned, I've learned to try to confront it and be better about just having the conversation and telling them the bad news as opposed to hoping it will somehow magically go away.
Yeah, because it never, ever does.
Never.
For sure.
Yeah.
You have a very memorable line I loved. No agenda, no attenda. So beyond listing the topics, what should I do as a leader to make sure that the meeting is not just a lost opportunity?
I cancel them. I think at times you should cancel meetings. Like if you have those set like Monday morning, here's our meeting, and you never ever cancel them, like that's probably a bad sign. I mean, I guess maybe, every one of yours is mandatory and necessary. But yeah, no agenda, no attendant was all about the fact that like if you haven't done the work to prepare as the one who's running the meeting, then we shouldn't be having it. Because I've had bosses and people I worked for where they'll have an excuse like, oh, I was too busy or the weekend got out of hand or whatever. And there's no agenda, and you walk in and you wander around, you waste the first 20 minutes. Well, I mean, it's just that's pretty expensive. It's a waste of time. People lose respect for you. Then they don't want to come to future meetings. And so just take the time to prepare for the meeting. Make sure a meeting is actually needed, because occasionally you've seen it. The meeting could be an email. Well, then make it an email if it could be one. But have an actual purpose to meet. Have action items that need to be addressed and talked about and put in play. But that's part of the agenda. So yeah, no agenda, no attenda. I think if you don't have a purpose for it, then just cancel. And I've certainly canceled meetings like, I don't really think we need to meet. I can send them what they need to be doing via email. There's no like conversation that needs to be had. Okay, cancel thing. And by the way, pet peeve of mine, don't say, I'm going to give you your time back. Do not ever, ever, ever say that. You do not own other people's time. You're not the owner of anybody's time. You don't own time, right? Just cancel the meeting or just end the meeting early. Don't say, I'm going to give you your time back. You don't own time. I hate it when leaders do that. Don't do that. Those words matter. Like, you're not this all-powerful owner of time, right? Time is just a thing. So if you end the meeting early, just end it early. If you cancel the meeting, just cancel the meeting. Write the email. Don't tell them that you're giving them back any time.
I'll remember that. I definitely won't end the podcast that way.
I've had a boss who did that all the time. Okay. So it's a very sore subject for me when he would say, I'm going to give you back whatever, 15 minutes. I'm going to give you back your time. It's like, no, you're not, dude. You don't own my time, right? We're just ending the meeting early. Like, that doesn't mean that's fine. We all love ending the meeting early. Like, you're not giving me back anything. Or when you cancel it, you're not giving me back the time. It's just cancel the meeting, like, you don't own that. It's like a very narcissistic thing to say. I don't get it.
You talked about handwritten notes and things earlier today, and you actually said you recommend following up the meeting with an email. And rather than send a transcript, you would actually have notes and action items and due dates that would be helpful, right?
After a meeting?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the leader of the meeting should be the one doing this. A lot of times they outsource that. I get why. And it's okay maybe to outsource someone who's taking the notes and then you review them. But I think that email should come from you and it's your notes. Like, I run Learning Leader Circle meetings. These are paid mastermind groups. I had one, in fact, this morning. I mean, I take notes during those meetings and I handwrite. They're not AI. Like, I handwrite those notes. So they're not perfect, but they're coming from a human. They're coming from me. They're how I experienced the meeting. And I always write, if I missed anything, please add that to this email. And people know, like, I genuinely mean that. So yeah, this could be old school, but I like being a note taker because it helps me learn. It helps me understand what's happening and what's going on. It helps me stay like with a frontline obsession by being a note taker in the meeting. And then by sending the follow-up email to the group, again, some people like to outsource that. I don't. I like to have ownership over that because I think it makes it sticky. It's just like with a podcast. I do handwritten notes during podcasts, and then I type up the notes after when I'm recording. Then I type them up for the show notes, and then I listen to it, and then I will tweak those notes after I listen to it. And so there's a lot of pieces there. I did the prep, I had the conversation, I had the handwritten notes, I had the typed notes, I listened to the podcast, then I retyped the notes. Well, that's like 6 or 7 things that I'm doing. That's what makes that information really, really sticky in my mind. And that's the whole point of being a learning leader. In my opinion, is what am I actually learning? Well, you got to make sure you have like a process in place to learn. And so whether it's running a meeting or whatever it may be, like have some sort of note-taking process so that you can make those key learnings sticky in your mind.
Yeah, that's my process as well. And so I'll take my handwritten notes and then I'll type up the questions that I want to ask and things like that. And you actually talk about people should leave their laptops and phones, behind in a team meeting because the presence, it doesn't facilitate a conversation, right? Yeah. And then and the reason that I take notes, and you just said it, the reason you take notes is it helps it stick. And so there's studies still show today that when you take your notes by hand, it sticks in your head better than if you just type away, right? So you're a funnel when you type to me. It's just coming in your ear and going through your fingers. But when you write, since you can't write every single word that's said, you're understanding and coalescing what they said and putting it in a more succinct way on paper.
Well, in the repetition, so Adam Grant has shared the research behind this for college students, which is going to be a battle when I talk to my daughter's going to college because they're so used to laptops and phones, and that's how they take notes. But the power of handwriting is good, and I think if the repetition element of you handwrite and then you actually type what you've written yourself, so you're getting to do it twice. That makes it that much more stickier. So figuring out ways. It's funny in college, like when we had study tables, we didn't have computers. It sounds terrible, but right. And ancient, but we didn't have computers in our study tables for football. We just were in like a basic room, and so I would have my textbooks, and I'd be writing papers like you do by hand, and then I would to go back and either type up my notes from what I was studying or type up the papers I had written. And by doing that, right, I'm doing it twice, and so it makes it way more stickier than if I'd just done it once.
No, I totally agree. People ask us, because we teach a 2-day project management class, and they'll say, and the binder is quite thick, and they'll say, well, how come you don't do this electronically? Because you're not writing notes electronically. That's why I'm here to teach you something, not just to pass a book over.
Love it.
So, man, I got like 40 more questions, but I want to get your daughter in the pool. So let me just,
thank you.
Let me just say, I really appreciate you taking the time coming on today. If people want to learn more about you or work with you on some of the masterminds you're talking about, of course, they can listen to your podcast, et cetera. But how can they do that?
Yeah, man. The home base for everything is learningleader.com. Or if you're in any podcast app, you can just search the phrase Learning Leader or my name, which is Ryan Hawk. That's the main thing. And then my next book coming out here short. I don't know when this is dropping, but my next book comes out July 21st called The Price of Becoming, that I'm super proud of and excited to get out into the world because I think it hopefully it really focuses a lot on that lead yourself portion that I've gone just been a maniac about for the past 5 years. And so hopefully people can read that and find it useful.
Well, we'll have to have you back on after I read that book.
Yeah. Well, especially the way you read books. I would love to see what resonates with you in that one too, because you've obviously done an incredible job with Welcome to Management. And that means a lot to me, and definitely some of your notes and the other questions too, because it's hard to know what's going to resonate. It's cool to revisit that work and see what's resonated for you. I'm glad you found it useful. That's ultimately the goal, man. So thank you so much for your prep and hard work and showing the love with being so curious. That means a ton to me.
It's my pleasure. And just to be clear, it's Hawk without an E, no E. Not like Ethan Hawke, it's Ryan Hawk.
Ethan Hawke, I know. When he came about, he got all famous, he messed it up. And all of a sudden people started adding an E on our name. And I get it completely. But yeah, exactly. No E at the end, just HAWK.
Ryan, thanks so much for the conversation, brother.
Thanks, Clint. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks for listening to The Conversation. To find out more about Clint, go to clintonmpaget.com and pick up Clint's book, How Teams Triumph, Managing by Commitment, at Amazon. The Conversation with Clinton M. Paget is a production of Forbes Books.